Everyone. So let's start with our Gita Dhyana. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritvarshini Bhagavati Mashtadasha Dhyayani Amutvam Anusandhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini Namo Astute Vyas Vishal Buddhe Full Arvind Ayat Patra Netar येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्ण प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान मया प्रदीप प्रपन्न पारी जाताये तोत्र वेत्र एक पानये ज्ञान मुद्राये कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथ जला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्राहवती कृपेन वहने कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोर मकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तनी सोतीर्णा खलु पांडवै रन्नदी कवर्तका केशवा पाराशरे वत्सरोज अमलम गीता अर्थगंधोटकम नानाख्यानक केसरम हरिकथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदे रह रह पे पिये मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानंद माधवम् यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्ये स्तवे वेदै सांग पद क्रमोपनिषदै गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थि तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. As you know, we are towards the end of chapter 18, Moksha Yoga, and we ended with the verse number 53 last week. And if you recall, these last three verses, 51, 52, and 53, Lord Krishna is giving us again the technique of meditation. So it must be so important to meditate. Again and again, he is telling us. He gave us the full technique, where to sit, how to sit, what to do, what do you get after you meditate. In the beginning of his discourses also. Now towards the end also he is repeating again, and several times he has repeated here and there. So great teacher is telling us, and we still don't do it. It's pretty shameful. And what is he saying? Let me quickly tell you. He says, purify your intellect. If you're meditating with an impure intellect, it's not going to work. Control yourself by firmness. Yourself means your ego. Relinquish sound and other objects when you are meditating, and abandoning attraction and hatred. Then he says, dwelling in solitude, eating what little, speech, body, and mind subdued, always engaged in meditation and concentration, taking refuge in dispassion. So, some of these techniques we use while meditating, some others we use these techniques rest of the day too. We got to remember that it does affect. If we are meditating for an hour a day, the rest of the 23 hours, whatever we do, that will give us a positive or a negative effect on our meditation. Okay? I mean, 1 hour meditation and rest of the time being careless, eating whatever we want to, how much we want to, at the wrong time, sleeping at the wrong time, getting up at the wrong time, useless conversation, useless TV watching. It's not going to work. That's what he's telling us. Then in number 53, he says, abandon egoism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, hoarding, free from the notion of mine. What happens? You become peaceful. So when you are peaceful by cultivating these qualities, he says, you are fit to become Brahma. That's how important all this is. This is what sadhana is. Cultivating all these qualities, that's what sadhana is. Because sometimes we wonder, we think sadhana is just saying the name of God or going to the temple every week, coming to the ashram. No, that's not sadhana. That's part of the sadhana, but that's not the whole sadhana. That's only a small part. We got to remember, write them down, these qualities, and see which one you want to work on diligently with a full firmness now onward. And what is the next stage of development? So this will happen when we have somewhat control over our personality. Physical, mental, emotional, intellectual. Okay, then you are fit to become Brahma. So that's what it says in number 54. Let's look at this verse. So Lord Krishna is concluding his description of the stage of perfection here. Brahmbhutah prasann atmaha na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. Brahmbhutah becomes Brahma. That is like a state of little perfection. Prasann atma, serene minded. So that means a personality who is unaffected by painful experiences. Normally something painful happens, we just become so sorrowful. And constantly we are running towards worldly happiness. So this personality is a serene, not running after and not running away. Serenity is there. Na shochati. Shochati means grieves. Na means not. So does not grieve. And we have talked about grief many, many times before. Na kankshati. Kankshati means desires. That means the craving. Does not crave for any material thing to make our happiness complete. Because why do we crave? We crave because we think we are insufficient. By doing this, but by having it, by going there, we feel complete. So this personality doesn't have any desires. Na kankshati. Sama means the same, sarveshu, all bhuteshu, to beings, mad bhaktim, devotion to me. Labhate, obtains, param means supreme. Becoming Brahma. So it's not really becoming Brahma, don't take it literally. It's almost like when we put water on the stove to make tea, what do we say? I'm making tea. It's not tea yet. You have only started making the tea. There are a lot of other things to be added. Keep that in mind. So in that sense, he says, becoming Brahma. Okay, if you are ready, sure, you have the pot, you have the water, you have the fire, you have the other ingredients also. You have started to make tea. Tea is not done yet. Serene in the self, he neither grieves nor desires. The same to all beings, he obtains a supreme devotion towards me. Mad bhaktim param. So you can see that with constant self-effort, relative peace in the mind is to be maintained for a longer period of time. And we have to guard it. A yoga student, aspirant, a seeker does not become lethargy or careless. Because we worked on that I am neither the bhogata nor the karta. So we got to guard that, those emotions, those truths. So this kind of a spiritual truth, once this is understood, the student becomes less agitated because he has control over all the disturbances. See, most of the disturbances in our mind, they come from our wrong identification. We identify with our mind or with our body or with our position or with our relationships. And when things are not going according to that, we just get disturbed. So that's why he says, serene minded, prasannatma, within himself. It's like a growing tranquility within himself, which is not dependent on outside. So such a yogi sees all living beings with equal vision. We have talked about that also earlier in the past. See, this is almost like a revision of what he has been telling us, but in a summary form. Because once we know the substratum is Brahma, in me also, in everybody else also, then sure, there is an equal vision. Because you are looking at the substratum, not the manifested part. So in such a state, a person is situated on the platform of realized knowledge. Okay? But over here in this verse, while he's telling us all these qualities, there's a beautiful twist here. He is saying that such a realized state of knowledge, that person attains par bhakti for God, supreme love for God. Because Gyanis are often fond of saying that bhakti is only to be done as an intermediate step toward Brahma realization. They claim that bhakti is for the purpose of purifying the heart. And at the end of the journey, only jnana remains, the knowledge. But over here, what is Lord Krishna saying? That having attained the highest realization of jnana, one develops par bhakti, supreme love. So this is the twist which I was talking about. And there have been many, many examples. Renowned jnanis, they got a glimpse of the form of God through the Gyan and they were drawn towards the Bhakti. Shankaracharya ji, Shukdev, Janak. These are the great examples. So what he is recommending over here is that sure, possess all those qualities, whatever we have been working on, and you will see that you will start loving God more and more. The key word is Param, the supreme. Supreme. So this type of an individual attains supreme devotion unto me. And devotion is measured by our sense of identification with the higher ideal. In order to identify with the higher, the infinite truth, there has to be a definite amount of detachment from the lower. Because these lower channels are the one where we dissipate the energy. We can reach to those heights when we are not dissipating any energy. And that's why he's talking about na shochati, na kankshati, because if we desire, we are dissipating energy. If we are grieving, we are dissipating energy. If we are considering this is bigger and that one is smaller, we are dissipating energy. If we don't have a serenity of the mind, we are dissipating energy. So for that Param Bhakti, we need higher level of energy. So we want to stop all the leaks so that we attain the highest. Okay? So Bhakti, Bhakti. And these grieving and the desires, if we pay attention, one who does not grieve will not desire anything either. They are connected. Because when we are grieving that I don't have something or somebody, or I lost something which I had. Okay, those they philosophically think about it. So let's look at the next one now. Further, he says, by devotion, what happens? Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yach asmi tatvata tata mam tatvata gyatva vishte tad anantaram. Bhaktya, by devotion. So with the knowledge, we got the devotion. What happens with the devotion now? With the love. Mam means me, abhijanati, he knows. Yavan, what? Ya, who? Cha means and, asmi means I am, tatvata in essence. Tataha, then, like therefore. Mam means me, tatvataha, in essence. Gyatva, having known. Vishate, enters. Tad anantaram, at once, without any delay. By devotion, he knows me. And again, devotion means love, supreme love. By devotion, he knows me in essence. What and who I am. Then, having known me in my essence, he at once enters into me, the Supreme. Because we want to have the merger. That's what yoga is. Union. Union cannot happen without loving. Love cannot happen without the knowledge. Without detaching from what we are not. So that is needed. That's why those are the prerequisites. So that's why Lord Krishna is making this very powerful declaration that only through devotion one can come to know God personally. It is the love which opens the door to the impossible. Otherwise, we cannot know God. So this love is not just a worldly relationship or the love which we normally understand. We just say, I love you and this is it. No. This is a higher level of love. It is love that opens the door to the impossible. The devotees understand God. That's why he says, will know me in essence, what and who I am. How? Because they possess the eye of love. See, just like a mother knows her child, because she has the eye of a love. Mother knows that my child is extension of me. With all the flaws, mother should know. Or with all the qualities, that love opens that door. So mere knowledge is insufficient for realizing God in essence. That's why we can study all the scriptures, memorize all the mantras. But if we have not cultivated love with the help of the qualities, we will not know God in essence. So it is through bhakti that a person enters into that secret and achieves full God consciousness, love. That's what he's telling us. So by devotion, he comes to know me. And devotion is not just singing the glories, devotion is love for the Supreme. Oneness with the Supreme, and oneness can happen only with the qualities cultivated. I have told you earlier that love is measured by the degree of identification the lover maintains with the beloved. That's love. That's the definition of love. Okay? The degree of identification the lover maintains with the beloved. And it's not only in our temple area. It's not only once a while. It's 24/7. Remembering God. Okay? And the term entry, because he says enter. The term entry is used here exactly in the same fashion as we use a dreamer enters into the waking state, or a waker enters into the dreaming state. That kind of an entry. It's not a physical entry. It's an entry of our inner consciousness. So the dreamer cannot retain his own individuality when he enters the waking world, but he himself becomes the waker. The same way, when the ego enters God consciousness, the individuality cannot retain itself separate. It just becomes one. There's no separateness. Okay? So like a misconception that the individual self, he really rediscovers that it's only the Brahmahood. And from there, those Mahavakyas have come. Aham Brahmasmi. The small I dissolves. It's only the big I. Aham Brahmasmi. And now Lord Krishna further tells us, because these are the, in summary, what we need to do. What we need to do. So devotion for the Lord is never complete without the service. That's where sometimes we fall short. Service. He says, Sarv Karmani Api Sada Kurvanaha Mad Vyap Ashreha Mad Prasad Vapnoti Shashrutam Padam Avyam. Sarv Karmani, all actions. Api means also, Sada means always. Kurvanaha, doing. Mad Vyap Ashreha, taking refuge in me. Mad Prasadat, by my grace. Avapnoti, obtains. Shashwatam, the eternal. Padam means the state of abode. Avyam, indestructible. So Lord Krishna is saying, doing all actions, always taking refuge in me. By my grace, he obtains the eternal, indestructible state or abode. So you can see that philosophy of Lord Krishna is extremely dynamic. He is not saying that sit down, just keep on chanting my name. He says, whatever you are doing, remember me. That means wherever you are, see God. And that's what the seva is. No matter what you do it as a seva. Learn to live for others. That's what he's telling us. He's insisting actually. So not only upon our identification with the higher, not only the detachment from the lower, but also understanding the inner experience positively by doing your duties also. Your relationship with the outer world also. You are not divorcing this outer world. You are still living this outer world. You are using these forces. You are using the family. You are using the community. You got to live a life where you help others. Sarva karmani api sada kurvanaha mad vyapashraya. That's what it really means if you look at it deeply. Because normally we do things for ourselves. It makes us happy. It makes us richer. He says, no, do it for me. Take refuge in me. So this is a condition he is adding for our fulfillment. Performing continuously all actions, always taking refuge in me. So in other words, serve without the sense of agency, that I'm not doing it. I'm not the doer. That's what take refuge in me means. Constantly working in fulfilling our obligatory duties towards our family, towards the society. If we do it that way, he says, Mad prasadat. My grace, my blessings will be with that person. That's how he says that person will attain the eternal immutable state of Vyam. And immutable means you will know that part of you which doesn't mutate. There's no mutation in the soul. So a person will attain the state of pure consciousness when a person lives for others. So he is giving us a path of knowledge also, path of devotion also, path of action also in these verses. All of them are taking us towards the same goal of realizing our oneness with God. That's why if you go back, verse number 54, he used Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. In 55, he said, Mam Vishte Tad Anantaram. And now he is saying, Avapnoti Shashwatam Padam Avyam. Very beautiful terms if you try to understand them. This is like whenever sadhana, we do it with the integrity. And this is the core of Bhagavad Gita. Bring your devotion for God also, do your karma also, and have the knowledge also. So Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karam Yoga, we got to bring it into our sadhana. Because we know that we are in the body. We have to follow all the disciplines to keep this body healthy and well working. And that is a discipline for the body level. Because mind won't be controlled if this body is not healthy. Karam yoga we cannot do if the body is not healthy, because we need the body in order to do the karam yoga, to do our duties. He is telling us to serve others. If body becomes sick, instead of serving others, others will have to serve us. So body level we got to be healthy. Then all the methods of channelizing emotions in order to discipline the mind, contemplate on the higher, is a bhakti yoga. If we are dissipating the energy, how can we employ that energy to love God? We got to understand the deeper implication of Bhakti Yoga. You remember in the chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga chapter, he gave us several qualities to cultivate. Those qualities are not just to memorize that I have memorized so many qualities. Those qualities so that we don't have a disintegrated personality. We are there totally to love our lover. That's a bhakti. And then Gyan Yoga, all the study, all the reflection, detachment, meditation, practices at the intellectual level, where we can make our mind and feel the silence. Silence. Silence of this infinitude. That is Jnana Yoga. So we need all these three. So to practice all the three during our life is to discipline all the three layers in us. These are the layers of our personality. Okay? Body, mind, and intellect. Remember that. Now, in the next verse, he says, Chet saha sarv karmani, mai sanyasya matpara, buddhi yogam upashritye, mat chit satatam bhava. Chet saha, mentally, sarv karmani, all actions, mai, in me. Sanyasya, resigning or dedicating. That's what sanyasya means. Matpara, having me as the highest goal. Buddhi yogam, the yoga of discrimination. So that really means having the intellect united with the God. Buddhi yoga. Upashritye, resorting to. Mad chit, with the mind fixed on me. Satatam, always. Bhav means be. Mentally renouncing all actions to me. So that means doing everything for the sake of making your lover happy. We know how to do it. But we normally do the actions to make these worldly people happy. Sometimes they are happy and most of the time they are not. Because their likes and dislikes change. But Lord Krishna is saying mentally renouncing all actions to me. That's easier. It's easier to make God happy than worldly people happy. Just like it's easier to make a mother happy. It's easier to make a guru happy. And it's easier than that to make God happy. But we just don't do that because we think God is a figment of some imagination. When the God is the only real thing. God is the one who's everywhere, no matter which action we are doing. So he says, mentally renouncing all actions to me. Having me as the highest goal. Don't forget, there are a lot of short-term goals, but the highest goal is God. Resorting to the yoga of discrimination, buddhi yoga. This discrimination really means knowing what is true, what is false, knowing what is permanent, what is temporary, knowing what is eternal, what is non-eternal. That's a buddhi yoga. We just constantly run after temporary, looking for small little pleasures here and there. While this biggest happiness, eternal happiness is right next to us, we ignore it. Ever fix your mind on me. That's what he's telling us. So mentally, all actions unto me. We've been talking about it throughout Bhagavad Gita. Both the ego and the egocentric anxieties for enjoying are to be renounced at the altar of the God. Got to work on that. It's not a one-time practice. It's a constant practice. And then he says, having me as the highest goal, always remembering. Whenever you're deciding between two things, because all day long we do decide, we are at the crossroads many times a day. The decision which you're making, is it taking you towards your highest goal, or is it taking you somewhere else? Remember that. Because if you take the wrong side, then it will be harder for you to come back on. To start your practice first time, it's easier. But if you let it go and want to do it again, it will take harder. Because there's a guilt feeling inside us. To cross over that hump is very difficult. So be very careful. So resorting to the Buddhi Yoga, we talked about it. Intellects, which is a Buddhi, the main function of the intellect is to discriminate. Remember that. Okay? And use your intellect properly. We are using the tool. We have the tools. We all have these tools, but we are using the tools for the wrong function. That's where the problem is. So we got to learn how to control our life and regulate it properly. The union of the intellect occurs when it's firmly convinced that everything in existence has emanated from God. So Buddhi Yoga, that's what Buddhi Yoga is. When we remember that it's connected to God and it's meant for His satisfaction. We must cultivate this kind of an intellect with proper knowledge. And this kind of an intellect should guide the mind in the proper direction. So mind should be guided by that higher intellect. Okay? So, and ever fix your mind on me. God Tattva as the goal of our life. Anybody who has surrendered himself mentally at all times at this altar serves all his creatures, and whoever discriminates and avoids all undivine thoughts and egocentric assertions, naturally, this person is moving towards the highest goal. So with a very resolute decision, because you all have heard that as we think, so we become. So this is all internally what's happening inside us. When he says in the next verse, Madchita Sarv Durgani. See, this next verse is, he's telling us that if somebody refuses to follow this, the path which has been talking about, so somebody does not believe it, someone does not want to follow it, what would be his condition? Constantly, Lord Krishna has been telling us, if you do this, you'll get this. If you don't, hey, this is what you'll get. And this is the law. It's not just for the people who study Bhagavad Gita. It is for everybody. This is the law. Matchita sarv durgani mat prasadat tarishishyasi ath chet tvam ahankaran na shroyasi vinakshasi. Mat chit, fixing your mind on me. Sarva durgani, all obstacles. Mat prasadat, by my grace. Tarishyasi, shall overcome. Ath, now. Chet, if. Tvam, you. Ahankaran, from egoism. Na shroshyasi. Na means not. You will hear. So that means you will not hear. Vinakshanti, shall perish. Fixing your mind upon me, you shall, by my grace, overcome all obstacles. So in other words, whatever he has been telling us, if we do it, fix our mind on him, keeping the goal in mind, subduing all the senses, dissolving the ego, seeing oneness, doing the practice, living for others. If we do it, he says all the obstacles you will cross over. Because you'll have that kind of a stamina, you'll have that kind of energy, because your mind is fixed on that ultimate goal. But if from egoism, you will not hear me, you shall perish. So that means all the obstacles will be there and then you won't be able to reach your goal. That's what perish really means. Because Arjun wanted a practical method to attain the infinite. And that's why Lord Krishna has been giving a necessary tips to Arjun. And we are so thankful to Rishi Vyas who penned it down for us. Lord Krishna did not write it. Lord Krishna is not the writer of Bhagavad Gita. Writer of Bhagavad Gita is Rishi Vyas. That's why we are thankful to the great writer. We have gotten all these tips beautifully, but ultimately we have to work on and follow these tips. So in essence, what he's saying, by your thoughts, renounce all your actions in me. In all activities, be conscious of the Lord. Keep him as the goal. Make your intellect constantly aware of this Lord of all actions. That's what he's saying. Do not forget God. And gradually what will happen? The mind and the body will begin to work under the command of such a inspired intellect. Okay? See, this is the kind of intellect we need. That's why we study. That's why we do the retreats. Or other places also, people are studying the scriptures so that the intellect becomes so sharp, so clear, and then mind follows it. And then body functions according to that. Because otherwise we keep making the mistakes in life. We make the mistakes only when our intellect does not function properly. Our intellect becomes itself a victim of the impulses and instincts of our lower nature. Sometimes we say something vulgar. Sometimes we eat something wrong. Sometimes we go somewhere where we don't need to go because we were not thinking right. And we suffer. So that's why he's saying to keep the intellect consciously wakeful, must remember the presence of God within and without. Because God is everywhere, inside also, outside also, but we forget that. So that's why in this verse, he is declaring the benefits of following his advice. But at the same time, he's giving us the repercussions of not following. Okay, so very clear message over here. He says, I am with you, but you got to remember that I'm with you. So that's why he keep on saying, he who has completely fixed all his thoughts upon me will cross over all difficulties by my grace. It's almost like a holding a hand of a grown up to cross the road. Over here, to cross over this sansar, remembering God, holding God's hand. Most of our obstacles in life are imaginary, created by false fears, deceitful anxieties of our own confused mind. And grace really means that we really can see clearly. What do we really need to do? What should we avoid? And what should we do? See, just like a sunlight, in sunlight we can see. When we remember that there's a light of God inside me, under the light of our own soul, we can make the decision better. So by constantly remembering the Lord and his glories, see, when we talk about the stories also, Monday we study Bhagavad Puran, the stories. What do we learn? The same thing. The glories of Lord, the graces of Lord. And that's how we cultivate a nobler and a higher goal of life. And that's how we conserve this precious energy and move that energy to the right direction. So, but remember his warning also. Warning. And he's telling us very clearly, it is from egoism. Egoism means you are identifying yourself with not who you are. That's the ego. Identification with the non-self is the ego. So he says, if from egoism you will not hear me, you shall perish. So this, remember, this is not a threat by this powerful personality. He's not trying to frighten the human beings, but he is merely making a statement of fact. This is the inevitability of law of nature. A man is free to choose freedom or bondage. In the first line, that is a path for freedom. The second line, path for bondage. Okay, so the path of freedom is described in the first line. And very sincerely, he is telling us, showing us with a great anxiety that don't fall prey to the ego. He's being very frank about it, actually. Be thankful to a teacher like this who is frank. Because this is what it is. This is the law. This is like a mother tells the child, if you don't study, if you don't behave, you'll have a very unsuccessful and unhappy future. It's not that mother wants that. Mother is only telling the child, or to a little baby, making him aware of the fire. Fire will give you burn. You will have pain. So the same thing this great teacher, Lord Krishna, is telling us. This is a guidance to this truth, way of life. We should always remember. But our egocentric desires, they force us to disobey this voice of the Lord, this warning of the Lord. That's why he's saying, you shall perish. That means you are not going to cross over right now. So we'll see that next week to weave this idea further into our mind. He's giving us few more verses. So we'll stop it here. So we'll start with verse number 59. Let me do the Shanti part, and then if you have any questions, I'll try to answer those. And after that, if many you are ready to sing a bhajan, we'll appreciate that. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. All right. Anybody has a question, Jyoti?
Not yet. Nana.
Yes, Nana.
Yeah. Namaste, Hershji. Can
Namaste.
you please tell me the meaning of Padam? I couldn't write that. Padam.
Padam means the highest abode, the place. Padam.
Highest abode means like
Bhagwan ka ghar.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's what Padam means. Anybody else?
No. I think we're good.
Either I did a very good job or I just...
You
you to
did a
sleep,
fantastic job.
Very nice.
right? I mean, there could be only two reasons.
You did a great job.
I did a great job. Okay, all right, if you say so. Okay, well, I hope you guys are doing well.
Nana,
At
do you have
least
Nana?
spring is around the corner, and just enjoy the outdoors also. So
Nana, do you have another question?
No.
Okay.
nice to see you, Jay. Normally, I think I don't see you, but good. Nice to see you.
Nice to
That's,
see you.
yeah. Everything good?
Yeah. So far, so good. Yeah, thank you.
Betsy is there, so that's good. I'm glad. So if nobody has a question, so many you can sing the bhajan, and maybe they'll have questions after your bhajan, and I'm still here.